to 8:30, and I know it's a Friday night, so people are gonna want to get started on their drinking early, I'm sure. Well, all right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. My name's Nate Frank. I'm the chapter chairman of Pennsylvania chapter of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. Along with myself, Don Rank, the chapter secretary, will be hosting as well, co-hosting. And we'd like to welcome Game Commission Commissioner Kristen Schnepp-Giger, who represents District 1 up in northwestern Pennsylvania. Thanks for being with us, Kristen.
Hey, thanks for having me, Nate. It's a good time to be here on a Friday evening and talk conservation with fellow conservationists.
Absolutely. I know I'm so excited for turkey season, and I don't know, anything talking hunting, fishing, I'm game for.
I'll talk to you. Cut me off.
Well, the first thing I want to talk about is turkeys. As you know, as most of us know, the 2021-2022 hunting season regs were adopted last Saturday.
Yep.
And there were a few changes. One that's gotten a lot of people's attention was the removal of rifles for the fall turkey season. There was some info in that. There was some info given in the fall or this winter by the Game Commission. But would you mind explaining a little more what went on there and what the commission is aiming to do?
Yeah. So let me preface this with, this was a really, really tough decision, and I'm not even a huge fall turkey hunter. And it was a tough decision because I realized that there are hunters out there that have a legitimate tradition of hunting turkeys in the fall with a rifle. So that was something that absolutely had to be taken into consideration. When you start looking at the numbers, you realize that of all the fall turkey hunters out there, roughly 1/3 of the fall turkey hunters are using a rifle, and they're comprising, 15% of the fall turkey hunters are using a rifle, and they're comprising roughly 1/3 of the total fall take. So really, it's a very effective minority. And when you get to thinking about it, every other species of big game that we have in Pennsylvania, we manage by type, right? Like, we don't allow people to break deer hunt in the middle of the rut. We don't allow rifles in spring gobbler season. We have a bunch of different season structures that go when the most efficient weapon is used. That time gets limited because those people are really good at what they do. So Mary Jo, the turkey biologist, ran some modeling, and she said, if we do take rifles out and then go with the assumption, and we all know what assumptions can do, right? So this could prove true, this could not prove true, it could be somewhere in the middle. But go with the assumption that every single fall rifle turkey hunter will pick up a shotgun and still take to the woods, and then we assume that he will have roughly the same success rate that the other shotgun hunters have statewide, that we will potentially reduce hen harvest by about 20%. And then when you look at it a little bit further and realize that some of the main units where fall rifle harvest was highest is up in that northern tier, New York, or northern tier of Pennsylvania, kind of north central part. Really some historic turkey strongholds that are struggling right now. So the absolute cut dry, question that everybody says is why? Why are turkeys struggling? Why in these historic turkey strongholds are turkeys having a tough time? And then we've got other places like suburban Pittsburgh where there's probably a turkey behind every tree. And the easy answer to that is, honestly, we don't know. We don't know. And it's not a Pennsylvania specific problem. They're having the same problem in New York, several other neighboring states. So it's kind of an Eastern United States problem. There's probably a number of factors at play. Don't have the research to back any one of those up conclusively. So when we realize that turkeys are declining, I mean that's the facts. The turkey populations are declining in most of the areas across the Commonwealth. And one tool that we have within our power as wildlife managers is to regulate that fall harvest. And that fall harvest is how we can best manipulate turkey populations to a level, right? So reduce hen harvest in the fall. There's that many more hens on the landscape in the spring and available to breed. Put nests out there and hopefully, raise that brood up. So, I mean, a lot of the common questions we get are, hey, there's more than one way to skin this cat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And 100% there's more than one way to skin this cat. So some of the other things that we looked at is, could we go to bearded birds only? I mean, if we went to bearded birds only in the fall, that would save the vast majority of hens. It would also alter the way the vast majority of fall turkey hunters enjoy the sport, right? Those folks go out there that are not out there and happen to opportunistically take a turkey. Most people that are targeting turkeys go out there, they bust up a brood flock, and they call it back.
Mm-hmm.
You bust up a flock of gobblers, and you can call them back in that day. I want to go hunt with you because I want to know how to do it. And I am by no means a turkey hunting expert, but if you can do that regularly and successfully, you've got some kind of trick up your sleeve, and I want to learn what you're doing. So when we realize 15% of fall turkey hunters hunt with rifle, a vast larger majority of our fall turkey hunters are using shotguns and using that method. So that would impact even more of our hunters if we were to go to bearded birds only. So that kind of went out the window, in addition to the fact that we don't know, are Pennsylvania hunters that good where they could potentially take enough gobblers that take enough of the breeding population after the spring that it could impact breeding success in the spring. We don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
So a ton of different angles, and there are 17 different ways to skin this cat. And you can make arguments every which way but loose. And at the end of the day, there are going to be people that benefit from the decision, people that don't like it. And I understand that, and I get that. But ultimately, I voted the way I did because I felt that this was the decision that will hopefully allow us to have a fall turkey season as long as possible in the state of Pennsylvania. Because what I don't want to do is have a discussion about why we closed it the fall statewide, which may happen if turkey populations continue to go down.
Yeah, one thing that stood out to me is the commission was able to focus on keeping that opportunity, that day, the unit effort, or the number of days we can go out and hunt. Yeah, they changed the mechanism that we can use to manage that population, but we're still able to get out there the same number of days, and we're still able to hunt them in the traditional ways that we had focused on. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and so the way I look at issues is how can we maximize hunter opportunity while not having a detrimental impact to the resource? Sometimes it's a game of give and take, when I get people that aren't going to do or aren't going to be able to use a specific gun maybe that they wanted to. But I would much rather have that dialogue back and forth about, hey, there's a shotgun in your gun safe. I'm pretty confident into that. Pick that up and go out in the field, then have the conversation of, hey, I'm sorry that you didn't even have the opportunity to go out and chase these birds.
Yes, especially as we look towards like hunter recruitment, retention. I imagine that's pretty, the number of days of opportunity is critical.
Well, it's huge, especially for the younger demographics that, they have a tough time getting in the woods. They have a tough time, whether it's because they have family commitments, because they've got jobs, they're tied up doing everything, under the sun. I've got a daughter that's going to Pittsburgh for a swim camp tomorrow. So, I get it. Everyday demands of family life and the time crunch involved. So if we can maximize the number of days that people can spend in the field, then hopefully folks can find a way to make it work.
Absolutely.
I'd add on to the number of days of field, not just for getting out yourself and getting your kids out, but if you're going to take someone new to hunting out and you only have a limited number of days, it's going to be harder to carve out some time. If I only have 3 days to hunt, well, I might not carve out one day for somebody who's never been hunting before that I'm not related to.
Right. Hunters are intrinsically selfish, but honestly, it's not just hunters; it's humans. I mean, when we look at any issue, whether it's any issue we talk about tonight, we could go on either side of the fence most of these issues, and at the end of the day, it really wouldn't make or break conservation in Pennsylvania. But people get really, really passionate and really fired up about all kinds of things because it affects them directly.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've been lobbying for the Don Rank Super Tag for a few years, where I get some opportunities. But
there you go.
Speaking of increased opportunity, especially with the younger generation, the Game Commission also made a change this year to run the deer seasons concurrently, which is a pretty significant change. What we're doing, from what I've seen, it's had pretty positive reviews. Would you mind sharing some insights and how that got developed?
Yeah, so I've been a big proponent of concurrent seasons for a long time. I understand the science behind it. I understand that concurrency is not synonymous with decimating the deer herd. But what the Game Commission as an agency is facing, and our biggest hurdle is the last time we went concurrent, the deer population did go down, but the deer population went down by design. I mean, it was supposed to do that. We issued more tags and went concurrent because honestly, it was very difficult for anybody with any forest land in Pennsylvania to grow a desirable tree because everything was getting munched. So from a forest health standpoint, from a disease standpoint, from any number of angles, we had too many deer on the lands, and we needed to bring that number back to balance with the environment. People saw, I mean, hunters delivered, right? We killed a lot of deer. So the biggest hurdle the Game Commission has is overcoming what people are seeing as far as, I remember seeing, 50 deer in front of butcher's shop and he couldn't get to them and all these deer spoiled and, any number of things like that. What they won't listen to is when you reduce antlerless allocations and increase season length, it's net zero difference. Okay? More opportunity and fewer tags is how we can. I mean, we've done it time and time again, so we know that it works. So I think this year, when people see that, and when people realize that we're not going to decimate the deer herd, I think it'll catch on and hopefully it'll stick. You're going to have the naysayers out there that if you tell them that the sky is blue, they're going to say, no, it's green. I mean, people in special regs areas that think there aren't enough deer. So some people like that. I mean, you just got to let them vent and then go with the science and and take into consideration, traditions and opinions.
Yeah. One approach I take with folks who I don't see eye to eye with on that is like, hey, let me try and show you a way that you could be more successful and see deer. I know growing up, I thought you just went and sit in the open woods, for hours and waited for that deer. And changing techniques, I think also it would change some of those naysayers' ideas.
Well, it adds a lot of opportunity there also because, I mean, if a hunter was successful in killing a buck in archery season, unless they're in an area that happens to be contiguous or they have a DMAP tag, that hunter's sidelined for the first week of rifle season.
Yeah.
And honestly, that happened to me last year. It was the first time I ever killed a buck in archery season, and I was literally taking pictures of does on my phone and sending them to people going, my doe tag that I have in my pocket right now could be killed. And then kind of further from that is I hunt a combination of public and private land. So I have some property here in Warren County, and I know for a fact that it happens all over this region and other areas of the state. Private land the deer get moved around really early in rifle season, and they find out where they're safe, and they hole up there for the second week. So deer essentially become unkillable when they're on coastal lands that you can't get to, and those same deer coming back on these forest owners' properties, eating their trees all year long. So it's an opportunity for people that fill buck tag in archery season, and an opportunity for landowners to be able to kind of help manage their property.
Absolutely. Don, do we have any questions? I'd like to open it up if anyone has questions. Just type them in the chat.
We have a couple.
Don, do we have it?
I'm going to piggyback onto the concurrent season. I've noticed that the allocations of doe tags or antlerless tags have changed according to WMUs. Some of them are less than last year because of concurrent season. I'm assuming that's in anticipation of a higher harvest rate during the first week of rifle season.
Correct.
Yeah, and as I've been told by biologists that you could hunt 365 days a year and they could just manage the population by limiting the tags.
Absolutely.
We have a couple questions. First one's about Sunday hunting, and they're asking for the. I'm going to scroll up because I can't read my stretch. There were additional. There's the 3 Sundays. Is there any talk of additional Sundays? Maybe a Sunday in the spring. That requires a legislative resolution, not a game commission decision. But
correct. So the state legislature gave us regulatory authority over 3 Sundays. And 3 Sundays started out baby steps, right? This is new in Pennsylvania. It's not new in most of the rest of the country, but it's new in Pennsylvania, so baby steps. So archery deer, rifle bear, rifle deer last year. And just kind of the way we anticipated, there were a lot of people that said, hey, that's fantastic. Well, what about us? What about the pheasant hunters? What about the small game hunters? And I was like, man, like, why wouldn't we? It seems like a brainer. So we expanded to that. So until the legislature gives us regulatory authority over more Sundays, that's kind of where we're at right now.
And that's something we're working on.
Appreciate it.
I did see that that some new species were added for Sunday hunting. Is that correct?
Yeah, we opened it up to all small game. So a lot of my pheasant hunting buddies were super stoked about that.
I bet.
I don't know, my dog would have been sidelined anyways if I still had a deer tag to fill on Sunday, because I mean, one shot makes a lot more meals in the freezer when you're shooting at a deer than when you're shooting at a pheasant, but he'd still be mad at me.
Well, that archery Sunday was really windy last year. I was getting seasick in the tree. I would have been happy to get down and hunt something else if I could.
There you go. Perfect.
Question we have, since the bear population was significantly less than originally anticipated, why do the additional opportunities remain in place?
So there's still, I don't know 100%, so I'm not 100% versed in where we're at with our bear population. What I can tell you anecdotally is that our bear population is still very high. Our game wardens are still getting multiple calls for nuisance bears all over the place, even in Warren County, Forest County, which is the least populated county in the entire state. And beyond that, they're getting almost weekly calls in the summertime for mangy bears, which is another indication of a very population level. My local game warden had his first mangy bear call in March of this year. So we can talk mangy bears, we can talk CWD deer or COVID in humans, right? Like when you're in very close contact with others of your species, that's how disease spreads.
Next question is about the elk draw system. Is there an option that would change from a point system to a random draw?
So I guess I would see if he could maybe unmute himself and maybe expand on that question just a little bit. Can you do that?
It's Chad.
Oh, wrong person. Everything moves as soon as I hit it. There we go.
Hi, Chad.
It's going to be a second. There you go.
Hello, how are you guys?
Good.
We're good. How are you?
Chad.
Doing awesome, great. Hey, I appreciate your time you're giving us tonight. I got this really good glare coming off my screens. I should get a halo. So I had just started hunting out west a couple years ago, and what I've was kind of shocked and dismayed to find was, I mean, there are certain states that I will never have a chance at drawing at because, you know, I waited too long, right? So, you know, you can look at PA, and we give out, what is it, 174 licenses, something like that.
We're up to 187, I think. This year.
Right. And do you know how many people actually apply for a license?
I think if you combine all 3 seasons now, so the archery, the general, and the lake, I think we're hovering probably in the 70,000.
Right. So the odds are, you know, proportionally, we're just going to keep increasing, right? So if you get people like me who buy a point every year or get a point every year, you know, newer hunters coming in aren't going to have a chance, right? It's just going to continue to be out of reach for anybody in the state to be able to draw a tag if they're a new hunter. So, you know, as painful as it would be, I'd give up like my 10 points to give next generations the opportunity to hunt, right? So New Mexico does a random draw. I think a couple other states might throw in a random draw occasionally, but you know, then there's a small percentage set aside for non-residents, and let those guys fight over it as well. Not that I'm advocating we restrict non-residents, but I do think that continuing with a point system with such a few number of elk tags is just it's gonna become an old man's sport, if you will. Which I might qualify for soon, but I'd rather not. Right. So, you know, if it's an opportunity to discuss it, you know, that might be good. I noticed that, I mean, price-wise, you know, we're offering a really good trophy selection of bulls at a super low price. So we're attracting attention from, you know, all over the country. And at the same time, you know, that attention comes in the form of people buying points. So I'm just not sure that there's a good end to this scenario.
Yeah, Chad, what you brought up, we've definitely had a lot of talks about, and it's another one of those, how do we skin this cat, right? I mean, got the method we're using now, and is it perfect? No. I don't know that anybody has the answer of a better way. But that's what these kind of dialogues are for, right? Like, literally, I'm an average everyday, just like everybody else on this call. I just happen to be your voice in person. So when you have ideas, thoughts, things like that, that's what these little chats are for. Because myself and the other 7 commissioners and senior staff are not to solve every problem or every issue that the agency faces. Where we're at right now, we modeled our system after, I think it was, and the reasoning behind that was because we figured that was fairest, and I don't even like that word. I don't like kids say that word. That's like considered the F. Back to better terms, the fairest way that we were able to incorporate 3 different seasons. So the old man's game, if you will, is the general season, right? Because that's the one that's been going on the longest. The other ones are relatively new seasons, and we saw this last year a young gal drew an archery elk tag, and she killed a cow, and everything was fine and dandy. But again, you can only have 2 preference points. So we the issue that we face here in Pennsylvania is our demand is way higher than our supply. I mean, a Pennsylvania elk hunt is on par with potentially a bighorn sheep hunt in Wyoming. It's like once in a lifetime deal. I mean, could you imagine if somebody drew a Pennsylvania elk tag more than once in their life?
Is that also a regulation? Is it a once in a lifetime tag?
It's not. No, it's not. I think you have to wait like 7 years.
Okay.
So the likelihood of anybody drawing multiple is slim.
Right.
Kind of like the likelihood of a big sheep multiple times in your life in some Western states is very, very small. What some Western states do that we do not do is you have to put in every single year, and if you miss 2 years, 3 years, whatever your preference point or your bonus points or whatever their structured system, what that does is it weeds out the people who really aren't that interested in. So that's maybe one consideration that we could look at to kind of weed that old man playing field back down to the folks that actually.
Yeah. So one of the, I know it's a big debate out west. One of the concepts is if you require people to burn their points eventually, right? I mean, that works out because you can't have people just sitting back and accruing points. But again, we don't have that demand. I mean, we don't have that opportunity, so we can't actually do that. My fear is that if we continue down a point preference game, that it's going to continue to get worse. It'll be harder to correct later than it is to correct now, right? Because right now you make people mad, but they still want to do it, right? so it's one of those things that's like, I never thought I'd ever have the opportunity to hunt elk in PA, right? So any opportunity is still a good opportunity. It's not an expectation. It's not a right? It's a complete privilege. So I don't know, but I appreciate you listening to my opinion or suggestion. Hopefully you guys, are talking about it.
So kind of summarize your thoughts for me. So if you were king for the day, and you could revamp, I mean, whether it's legislative, regulative, whatever you want to call it, if you could be like, bam, this is what you need to do, and the elk system would be where we need it to be in Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow.
How'd you do it?
Yeah, thanks for putting me on the spot there.
I mean, honestly, though, Ed, if you want, you can say, look, let me think about this. Let me get back to you, and we can chat again. But
Yeah, and I would love, I would love for that to be like an ongoing dialogue. A lot of times when game commissions ask for surveys or comments, you write something, you send it in, you never hear from it again, and I understand there's probably 3 million people in Pennsylvania that want to talk to you right now. I think the easiest summary is that you have to move to a random draw. It just is not a sustainable pathway for preference points. From there, I don't want to take that hardline position, but I don't know if there's a compromise either. If you look at states that have like over the counter for certain units and preference points for others, it's the same problem. You're just forcing a larger population onto a crowded area, while the trophy areas then become, either the rich man or the old man get to play in it. So I don't see how you can avoid making it completely random and moving up from there. I don't even know if there is a way to move forward. I mean, when we look at like Kentucky, Tennessee, and these guys that are starting to introduce these elk hunts, first you see the governor tags going out that people are paying, tens of thousands of dollars for.
Right.
And then other than that, it's a very limited opportunity. So I think East Coast, if we want to attract this kind of business and conservation effort, that we have to make it more reasonable.
So when you say random draw,
everybody has an equal shot every year.
Okay, so if you buy a license, you could have a 1 in 50,000 shot every single year,
Well,
50,000 apples.
And also, you said a magic word there, so I'll quote you on it. But you have to buy a license to get into the draw.
Right.
So as much as I hate it, Arizona, I have to buy a $300 license to buy an elk point. Utah, I have to have some sort of license in order to apply. Same with Colorado, right? It is when you have a limited opportunity, that's a very good opportunity. Pennsylvania has the option right now of collecting revenue for that, which is always good. Sometimes I should take that back. I strike that. I'm a taxpayer. It's not always. But when you look at a resource like this, I think it's a reasonable suggestion.
Okay.
I'm glad you suggested it.
Certainly a lot to talk about. And Pennsylvania, I mean, what other state out there has the 400 class bulls that we have? I mean, we have bulls every day of the week that'll put. You guys hear that? My dogs are playing up here.
I mean, yeah, look at Arizona, right? If you get into San Carlos, you can expect a 400 bull, but how much does that cost? I mean, it's one of those things where if you have to ask how much it costs, you can't afford it. So,
exactly.
I can't even ask. But other than that, you're looking at a private ranch, landowner tag somewhere where, again, you're going to be paying $10,000, $12,000 for that. So, it's reasonable to require at least the purchase of some sort of license in order to get the tag application.
Yep.
I'm not sure if I like this idea, but what about capping the number of points you can accumulate?
That's been another thing we've talked about. But so if you can only get 10 points, do you get 10 and then never buy another license, but you stay in the pot and draw a tag in 15 years when you're crippled and can't hunt anymore?
Well, I think what a cap like that would do is you're only handicapping the last 10 years of people that start into the process, right? I mean, if everybody's capped at 10, quite easily, everybody's at 10 except for the last 10 years, right? So again, it's a short, and I'm not putting you down for this, but it's kind of a short-term solution because eventually you're going to run right back into the same problem, in my opinion, right?
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of conversation. I mean, even out west, as Chad mentioned, like there's point creep. We hear about it all the time, and it's going to have to be addressed, I think, by states as we as we go into like 30, 40 years of people drawing, putting in for points. an interesting conversation for sure.
Oh yeah. If anybody has like 30 or 40 points out west and they want to do a group application with me, I'll throw my contact info in that window. So,
Cheers to that.
but yeah, I do appreciate the conversation, and I'll let other people bring up their points. But I would love to have a conversation with you guys about it.
Sure thing.
There's a lot smarter people than me would probably like to have a conversation with you about it too.
Well, our next question is the long one, and I'm sorry I can't pronounce your name. EF2254. Just kidding. It's about the ability to raise license fees. It's controlled by the state legislature. They've been reluctant to grant PGC the authority for purely political reasons. Is there any progress on that issue that would allow PGC to increase license fees without being restricted by the state? The next question: is this an issue that BHA should campaign for? I'm gonna answer that part. We have been campaigning for it, and I'm going to say that's a failure by me to not communicate that to the members, that you know that that's what we're campaigning for. And maybe we'll be planning a Zoom meeting with the chapter board so that we can answer some questions to the chapter pretty soon. But that has been on our legislative agenda for the last few years, and it's one of the things we're working on right now. But Mr. Geiger, do you know of any progress on that issue?
So I don't think there's been any forward progress. Would the agency like to have complete authority over setting our fees? Absolutely. I mean, right now we can't decide that all of a sudden we want to institute a fall turkey tag $5 that we know how many people are actually hunting. So it's not purely a revenue thing. While that is definitely a component of it, it's not really the whole thing. And license revenue has dwindled, obviously. The reason that you don't really see the Game Commission stating hard for that right now is that we're very, very fortunate that we have a lot of covering those budget shortfalls, and there are not very many any other state agencies and with our natural resources being timber and oil and gas primarily, and those constitute a major portion of the budget every single year. So we're actually able to do a lot of things and do a lot of research in this state that a lot of other states can't afford to do because their license numbers are down. We all know like dollars and $1,000, right? Like plus PR dollars, and you can't get them because you don't have the hunters. So, is it an issue? Yes, it's an issue more from a strategic standpoint and from right now. That's not to say that in the future the Game Commission rely more heavily on need a license increase if the timber market tanks, if oil and gas tanks, if those revenue sources dry up, it's going to be being able, I mean, just like your own personal financial plan, right? You don't have all your eggs in one basket. So it's not wise to their eggs.
And with the piggyback on it, we have been talking to legislators about this. I've had about 20 meetings, I think, in the last month and a half with different legislators in the House and the Senate, and each time we brought this up. So we have been campaigning for it for at least.
Yep, like I said, strategically, that would be a fantastic win for the agency. It would be great sustainability. it's something that we would all love to see happen. Does it need to happen right now, and is it completely detrimental to the right now? No, but that also puts us in a good spot.
And we were hoping that since the Fish Commission got it last year, it would set a precedent. So
Correct.
Another bill that we backed. So, our next question: would PA ever consider mandating big game harvest reporting, either successful or unsuccessful? So whether or not you tag a deer, you have to report.
I mean, you're supposed to report it.
I mean, even if you don't report, even if you don't take a deer. So
So
with a map tag, you have to report, or your second spring gobbler tag, you have to report whether you get one or not. But with your regular tags, if you don't get anything, you don't have to report anything.
I guess I would be interested to know how we would enforce that.
I've seen proposals where it's a requirement. Well, in Idaho, if you do not report that you have either taken or not taken an animal, you cannot buy your hunting license.
Okay.
Yeah, I went on an unsuccessful elk hunt a few years ago, and I had to report that I had to admit that I was unsuccessful, so that if I ever want to go back, I can buy a license. So.
Right. Yeah, well, honestly, Pennsylvania is light years behind many states as far as reporting goes. There are places out there that have 4 hours to report whether or not you are anywhere reasonably close to cell and internet service. That's your duty and your obligation as a hunter is to figure it out, right? If you're successful, you had better figure out how you're going to report that. We don't have that. Sure, we don't have that ability. Pennsylvania. That's not saying we can't ever. The other unique thing that we're dealing with in Pennsylvania is we have the most number of hunters of any state in the entire country. We're second to Texas. We have between 100,000 Pennsylvania. That is a lot of people, and if we can't even communicate regulation and get that to the simple level, how in the world are we going to get that number of people to report the way we want them to report? I mean, a lot of times I just want to throw the regs book at my kids and be like, pretend like you're back in and that would allow us to be able to communicate our message clearly and concisely in a manner that most hunters aren't out there trying to break the law. But a lot of hunters break the law inadvertently because they don't understand the regulations. It's too freaking complicated.
I report mine just so I can brag.
Getting into regulations and like the hunters, the digest that we get when we buy our hunting license every year. One thing that someone asked us was quartering up an animal. It is legal, but it's not really addressed in there. And as a lot of folks in our organization, we go out west, we hunt, we pack our animal out on our backs. Some of us have transitioned to do it here, but I know myself, I've received different advice from different region offices. Is there any talk about clarifying that in the digest?
We probably should. We absolutely should, because I've gotten a lot of that same question myself. So in addition to the number of hunters Pennsylvania has, the diversity, I guess is what you would call it, of hunters is astounding. We have hunters out there who are 100% completely and totally capable of going into the backcountry, harvesting an animal, quartering it, packing it out. I mean, no problem. They enjoy it. They love it. Put it in their freezer like it is what it is. And then we have hunters out there that this is actually happened. I was working at a deer processing shop, and it was an archery season, and a guy came and pulled up, opened the trunk of his car, and there's a deer in the trunk of his car. And I said, okay. And when he pulled it out, it fell on that concrete slab. It just didn't sound right when it hit. I mean, when you've seen enough deer hit the ground out of pickup trucks and whatever, like they just right. And I'm like, huh, that sound. I looked at it, it was a doe. I looked at it and reached my hand in the body cavity, and the diaphragm was still intact in the sand. And so I looked at the guy and I said, did you get the heart and lungs out of this animal? He's like, oh, yeah. He's like, the heart was all mush. He's like, which I was surprised about because I shot that deer with a field tip because I left my broadhead home, but I took the afternoon off of work and I didn't want to climb down from my tree stand and burn the vacation time. And then this thing walked in front of me. So I don't even know why we have to use broadhead thing. And so I had to stand there literally in disbelief. And then I showed the guy what a diaphragm is, pulled the heart and lungs out. And so, like, we are literally dealing with massive knowledge gap in the hunting population from people that are lucky that they actually killed a deer and they don't have a clue what to do with it, to people who are comfortable taking it literally from field to table by themselves.
That's an interesting point. That really is. I never thought about the knowledge gap, which, up until 3 or 4 years ago, I didn't know what to do with the deer.
We'll piggyback on that. We get a lot of questions about, can you quarter out a bear?
I really honestly don't know.
Okay.
I would think
I had to get more and tell me yes.
I would think probably.
But as long as you bring the head out, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I've been told.
I think I saw a quarter bear come through a check station once.
Yeah, that question comes up at least 3 or 4 times every bear season, either at pint nights, on Facebook posts, or what have you. There's that one comes up. So that's something that would be helpful to have in the regulations.
Okay.
In the guidebook. Yeah.
Right.
And like I said, there's some people who can do that, and there's some people who cannot.
We literally should have had this conversation last week because we are past the press date for this year's digest, but that would have been fantastic.
Well, we're always looking to the future, and maybe we could do another event where we.
There you go.
That, yeah. And the other thing is about quartering them out in the CWD areas where you do not want to move the whole carcass out of those areas. It's more important ever to know how to do that, debone the meat, quarter them up in the field, and get them out without carrying the spinal cord and the brain and everything out of those areas to prevent the spread.
Right. But then the complicating factor there is, do they leave the carcass out where, anything else would come by and step and lick and transmitted that way? We got
two. Someone just said they've had a deer in their trunk. Yes.
Perfect.
I did see when they had the Game Commission did the game hunt at the John Hines Refuge. Somebody brought home a deer in an Uber. So after they learned,
I saw that
in a trash bag. So.
Yep.
Question: how can BHA better partner with you, or how can we better impact your initiatives this year and over the next few years, small or large? That came from board members. So.
That's a good question. I mean, BHA is obviously, big in the public lands, right? Like that's kind of your wheelhouse. So chiming in on public land stuff, whether it's the national forests we have here in Pennsylvania, DCNR lands, game lands, those sorts of things are big from a legislative and policy standpoint. There are some people out there that are legislative and policy like gurus, and that's fantastic because those things make my head spin. What I would love is for organizations like BHA that are out there. I mean, we talked about the knowledge gap, right? Between I shot a deer and I don't have a freaking clue what to do with it to packing it out. And that knowledge gap is growing wider and wider and wider every year as we have people that are starting to hunt, but they don't know what to do. So BHA has a younger membership. And so from within your ranks, within your demographics and your social network, to bring more people in and then teach them the entire process, not let's go out and see what the biggest buck is we can shoot, and then, you know, parade them around in the back of the truck for a week and wonder why the meat tastes like crap, and, you know, eventually end up at a tavern. Pennsylvania has a lot of redneck hunters to do that, right? I mean, it is what it is. And if we want hunting to continue and be relevant in the future, all of us as hunters, as conservationists, need to portray hunting in a very positive light. When you think about it, less than 10% of the American population hunts. And roughly 10% are your anti-hunting extremists, right? So we've got hunters over here, we've got anti-hunters here, and you think about it like the fulcrum in the middle. The other 80% are in the middle, but they vote, right? We've talked time and time again about how politics play in wildlife management. But what we need are those 80% on our side. And we can do that with how we portray hunting. Sometimes we do that very, very well. Sometimes we do it very, very poorly. And so policing within our own ranks, mentoring within our own ranks, and organizations like BHA that have the knowledge base, and that's, you know, your ethics and your morals are right there in line with how I personally, you know, would like to see hunting portrayed in the future. You know, picking up on some more mentored hunts and running with it and bringing more hunters into our ranks. That's my wheelhouse. That's, you know, that's what drives me and my passion. Thank goodness there are people that feel the same way about regulation and policy and politics, because we need those people.
Thank you, Don.
Right.
I'm the policy nerd, but
There you go. Perfect.
shout out to he's not on the call, but our board member, Adam Eckley, who runs our Take Two program. It's a member, it's basically, we challenge our members to take two people on a fishing or hunting activity, either actually hunting or fishing, or a day at the range, scouting, things of that nature. But he also has set up a mentor-mentee program and has gotten people from all walks of life together. And they've been doing everything from deer hunting to ice fishing. And I get to read the message board, and there was people right now talking about either just going to the range to get experience with guns, scouting for spring turkey, shed hunting to look for deer for next year. One of our board members, Catherine Elsner, was going ice fishing, and she basically dropped a point and said, anybody who wants to learn how to ice fish, meet me here on Sunday. And he's had great success with getting people out there and trying to close that knowledge gap. Nate, didn't he shoot a deer and then call everybody over his house to butcher it, or did I?
He didn't. Several of us tried to do that, but with the warm first week of the season, and a couple strategic people getting COVID or being exposed to COVID, we couldn't get that done. But we're hopeful for a butchering course this summer. Actually, we're looking at purchasing goats, and yeah, it's a good replica.
Sure.
So, hoping to do things like that. Well, we're closing in on 8:30 here, and I don't want to take up any more of your time. But we do have one short question I think we can answer pretty quickly, and that's did the ability to no longer possess a paper tag, but rather an electronic license, did that pass this last week?
So Sort of, kind of. There's a little bit of a discrepancy in the question. You will still have a paper tag, like a carcass tag issue. You'll still have to physically tag that deer in the ear, or wrap it around the leg of that turkey. Your license itself can be on your phone. So it's definitely electronic licensing. You can present that to the game warden if he checks you, or the deputy if he checks you. So if you go online and purchase your license, you'll get a downloadable link that you can put on your phone. And then instead of the long paper that you would otherwise get in the mail from the licensing agent, you'll just get the carcass tag. You'll have to.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Time for one more? This is a good one. All right.
We'll keep you as long as you let us, basically. So.
All right.
So public lands are very important, obviously. The mapping center, the GIS app that the Game Commission has, it's good, but it has its limitations. Onyx, who they just have an incredible platform. Has there been any talk about collaborating with them, or making a more powerful tool like Onyx for hunters to use?
It's an interesting proposition. I mean, the platform that Onyx has is fantastic, right? We've probably all been using it for several years now, and it seems like it gets better and new features all the time. Whether they, as a private company, would be willing to work with state agencies, I don't know. I mean, I know through work with Turkey Federation that they do a lot of work with not-for-profit conservation-based organizations. I'm sure they do with BHA as well. I know they do with RMEF and a lot of those. I don't know if there's been that public-private, agency to private business bridge built in there.
One thing, there's a second portion of this question regarding private lands and the hunter access program, which is a little hard to decipher sometimes, like which properties are, you can actually hunt. It'd be kind of cool to see a layer on Onyx that that we could access as hunters. I don't know. I don't even know if that's like a GIS layer that's out there. I know there's like a point, but I don't know if it's property based.
I mean, I would be surprised if it wasn't a GIS layer, but I don't know how any sort of confidentiality. I mean, do private landowners want that out there or not? I don't know. And would a certain number of landowners say, yeah, you can, I want to enroll this in hunter access, but I don't want my property boundaries downloadable on everybody's phone. I don't know. I don't know.
It's interesting. Well, it's 8:30, so I don't want to keep anyone longer than we said we would. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Kristen, thank you so much for joining us. We hope to have you again sometime. We'd love to do this again before hunting season.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nate. And thank you guys for tuning in. I enjoyed it, and keep firing those questions away.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Have a good night.
Thank you. See you, everybody.